Divine revelation is a form of guidance from Allah in matters that cannot be perceived by anyone other than the prophets alayhi salam. It's not possible for others to have a true perception of the state and effects of divine revelation. That's why these things appear so unfamiliar. And all those people who are overwhelmed by the worldwide dominance of Western thoughts, they look at things with doubts and disbelief. Some people even go to the extent at open denial of Wahi, believing it to be nothing but stories and tales. There are some who don't deny it openly, but in this era of scientific advancement, they feel shy of talking about it. Before further delving into the subject of divine revelation, we should first decide whether there is a creator and master of this universe, or it all came into existence by itself. As for those materialistics who deny the very existence of God, it is very futile to discuss this topic with them, because a person who does not accept the existence of God will not think over the reality of revelation seriously. Therefore, we must first discuss with them the existence of God. But as for those who believe in the existence of God, it is not difficult for them to understand the intellectual need of revelation and its possibility and real existence. If the universe has been created by the one and only omnipotent being who runs its well-knit and organized system through his infinite wisdom, and who has sent man in this world with a specific purpose, how then would it be possible for him to leave him astray in darkness and not even tell him why he came into this world, what his duties are, what his ultimate goal is, and how may he achieve that? Can anybody in his senses send forth his servant on a travel and not tell him the purpose of this journey when he starts, nor make it clear to him through any message afterwards as to what he is supposed to do, or what his duties are during the course of his journey? When an ordinary human being cannot be expected to do so, how can we say that for Allah Almighty, whose infinite wisdom is running the entire universe, how is it possible that the all-knowing who created such an amazing system of sun and moon, heavens and earth, stars and planets, will not make any arrangement for establishing a channel to communicate with his creatures to guide them about the purpose of their existence? If one believes in the all-comprehensive wisdom of Allah, he must also admit that he has not left his creatures in darkness, but has definitely established a system for their guidance. It is this organized system of guidance that is known as divine revelation and prophethood. It should now be clear that Wahi is not merely an article of faith, but a religious belief, also a requirement of human mind, an intellectual requirement, the denial of which is in fact denial of the infinite wisdom of Allah. As for the objection that the various methods of revelation are beyond our comprehension, it is not a rational argument for not accepting the reality of revelation. The intellectual need and occurrence of a thing proved by irrefutable arguments cannot be rejected merely because we have not directly observed it. If only a few centuries ago someone was told that people would be able to cover thousands of miles in a few hours by traveling in an aeroplane, he would have dismissed the idea as a fairy tale. But did his ignorance about aeroplanes make them any less real? In many of the backward areas even today, you will come across people who are not prepared to accept that man has landed on the moon. But does their denial disprove their reality? If the answer is no, and certainly it is no, then how can the Wahi, the divine revelation, the intellectual need of which is proven and undeniable, and which has been experienced by 124,000 of the most truthful persons, be rejected or disbelieved? And then after all, why do these methods of revelation clash with reason? If with their limited brains, scientists could invent such marvelous things as telephone, teleprinter, radio, television as means of communication, does Allah not have enough power to establish a surer and more powerful system of communication between Him and His servants than all these methods? The reality of revelation is just that Allah reveals His words to any of His messenger directly or through some agency. The question is, what intellectual reason bars its acceptance? We hesitate to cite the example of human inventions or actions to help understand revelation, but just to clarify the point, we are presenting here the example of a human action wherein someone captures the mind of another person and induces in him whatever thoughts he desires. In the terminology of mystics, this action is called possession through the power of thought or thought transfer. We find innumerable examples in biographies of mystics. Through the power of his imagination, someone prevails over the mind of another person to the extent that he makes him speak and do act whatever he commands him. The materialistic had been rejecting such power of dominance for a long time, and following them, many Muslims also thought it to be mere fiction until the celebrated Swiss physicist Mesmer, born in the middle of 18th century, selected human mind as the subject of his research, and in 1775 disclosed in one of the articles that human mind can be subjugated through a magnetic process. He called this process as anima magnetism, and while in France, he also made successful practical experiments of this process, but he could not fully convince his contemporaries. Then another person, James Braid, in 1842 in England, confirmed the validity of this process on scientific basis and called it as hypnotism. There are different stages according to hypnotic theory as propounded by James Braid. In the highest stage, the entire muscular and nervous systems of the hypnotized person become paralyzed and senseless, and along with this, the extrinsic and intrinsic sensations also become idle. But there is also an intermediate stage in which the body is not paralyzed. This effect has been described in the World Family Encyclopedia. If the hypnotic process is light, the hypnotized person remains capable of imagining various objects. For example, in such a semi-hypnotized state, it is quite possible that he may believe himself to be a different person, or he may begin to see certain things that are not there, or feel some extraordinary sensations under suggestions by the hypnotizer, because he becomes a subject to the command of later. Even the materialistics who don't believe in hypnotism were convinced after the research and experiments of James Braid, and today become a subject of great interest for Western people. Hundreds of conjurers are making good money out of it. It's also being used to treat patients. The thought force, which is known to Muslim mystics for hundreds of years, which was generally brushed aside as superstition, has now become a reality in the form of hypnotism. And now the even so-called rationalist, for whom every discovery of West is scientific and any extraordinary performance of Muslims a superstition, have come to accept it. Anyhow, what is emphasized here is whether it is mesmerism or hypnotism. It is nothing but that one man prevails over the mind of another and infuses his own thoughts into the mind of other person. The question now arises that God, who bestowed so much power to the imaginative faculty or hypnotism to man that he can possess the mind of another person for just ordinary purposes and sometimes just for nothing, does he not himself possess the power and authority that he may prevail over or capture the mind and heart of his messenger and reveal his words to them for the sake of guidance to mankind?